Hello, boys and girls. Yesterday, we planned our literary essays on our planning pages and wrote the introductions to our next literary essay for Those Shoes. Today, I want to start to write my supporting paragraphs. Here's my essay from yesterday, and here's my planning page from yesterday. Please make sure you have both of these ready to go. First, let's review the reading response rubric that you were given earlier this year. As stated, a literary essay is very similar to what you've already been doing. Introduction and conclusion. Restate the question. Answer the question by giving your idea or opinion. These are two things that we've already done. You've been doing in your opinion writing and you've been doing in your reading responses for months now. Of course, we'll also want to repeat our answer at the end when we get there, but that'll be for Friday. Break our ideas into separate paragraphs. So we wrote our introduction yesterday, and now we're getting ready to write our first supporting paragraph. Write in complete sentences. I think we all know that. Use transition words. Again, something you guys are extra great at. You guys write one reason is, also, another. Use at least 2 examples of text evidence, meaning at least one piece of evidence for each supporting paragraph. You can use words like the book said or in the book to transition into what your evidence says. Details and thoughts. Show your thinking by explaining the text evidence that you chose. How does it relate to your original idea or answer? Describe what the quote means. You might say, this shows or this proves. I would say this is probably the box that most of us forget to do. Everybody seems really good at telling me their reason and telling a piece of evidence from the story, but the hardest part is also telling me, what did that quote or that part of the story make you think, and how does it really prove your idea? And last but not least on our rubric, you have editing, mostly correct spelling, capitals, and punctuation. So, my supporting paragraphs are going to need a transition sentence, text evidence using one of the sentence starters that was on the rubric, my own thoughts, again, using one of the sentence starters can be helpful, and I have to remember not to repeat the same words over and over again. A lot of times we write certain words in our transition sentence, the same words from the text evidence, and then we repeat ourselves a third time when we do our own thinking. We want to make sure that we change up our words and we are clearly explaining each of our ideas. Now let's look at my planning page from yesterday. I already did my introduction paragraph, so now I'm going to look at my first supporting detail. I said, she sees her dot hung on the wall and says, I can do better than that. And that this shows me she has her mind made up to do better in art today. Like when her teacher hung her work, it wasn't good enough for her anymore. See, sometimes we just have to reread things and make sure it makes sense. Okay? So, now I'm ready to write my paragraph. Again, I'm trying to prove that Vashti is determined. So I want to use the text evidence that I've picked out yesterday and my original thought. I'm just going to reread my introduction paragraph so I can get my brain back into the mindset of being ready to write my next paragraph. I had been reading The Dot by Peter H. Reynolds. Have you ever read a story and thought to yourself, what kind of person is this character? Sometimes when I read, I think about how nice or how unkind a character is. In The Dot, I think the main character, Vashti, can best be described as determined. So I know the first thing that I need is a transition sentence. So I'm going to start a new paragraph and say, my first reason is, and I'm going to just fix this for a second. My first reason is My first reason Vashti is determined is because, spelled that wrong, is because she isn't satisfied with her artwork and thinks she can do better. Okay, here's my transition words, and I'm going to explain my first reason. She isn't satisfied with her work and thinks she can do better. This is where I can do my next part, which is to include my text evidence. In the book, or the book said. Let's go back to our planning page. She sees her dot hung on the wall and says, I can do better than that. So I think I'm going to start with the sentence, in the book. And I'm even going to copy and paste this because I don't really need to write that again. So in the book, there's my transition for my text evidence. She sees her dot hung on the wall and says, I can do better than that. Okay. Next is where I can add my own thoughts. What does this quote prove, or what does this quote make me think? Again, I have planned this yesterday, and that might be the same for you, or you might have to do that today. Oops. So this shows me that Vashti has made up her mind to do better in art today. Like when her teacher hung her artwork, it wasn't good enough for her. Let me just reread this and make sure it makes sense. My first reason Vashti is determined is because she isn't satisfied with her artwork and thinks she can do better. In the book, she sees her dot hung on the wall and says, I can do better than that. This shows me that Vashti has made up her mind to do better in art today. Like when her teacher hung her artwork, it wasn't good enough for her. I'm going to say this proves that Vashti is determined to do better. Or let's, instead of repeating it, to make a better dot. Boom. Again, I have my transition sentence, I have my text evidence sentence, and I have a sentence for my original ideas or thoughts. I also added just kind of a final sentence for my paragraph that linked back to my reason of how she's determined to do better. Notice how I tried not to repeat myself? I'm going to get started on my second supporting paragraph. Why don't you try? Make sure you review your planning page from yesterday, as well as the reading response rubric. It is posted on the slides for you to make a copy, or you might have your reading response notebook at home already. Good luck!